Hello guys, today I'll be talking about 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 1997. And there were of course many albums that I could choose from, but this is not a top 10. These are 10 albums I randomly selected that I feel are great from this year of 1997. But yeah, this is in no particular order, so let's go ahead and dive into it. We're going to start off with this album, Transistor by 311. And this has to be my favorite 311 album. Now, when it comes to picking a favorite 311 album, many people point to the Blue Album or even Grassroots, but for me, I have to go with this album. I mean, definitely a unique album in their discography, and I still enjoy a lot of the songs on here. And sure, I mean, 21 songs, that is a lot. And there are maybe a few skippable songs on here, but there isn't really anything on here that I would say is straight up bad. I mean, I pretty much like everything on here, and some of my favorites on here, the title track, Prisoner, which is probably one of my favorite 311 songs. And I'd maybe say the same thing for the next song, Galaxy, which is maybe one of their most underrated songs. You do have the big hit on here, Beautiful Disaster. I really like the bass work from Peanut and the song What Was I Thinking. You have Use of Time, which I really dig the solo work from Tim Mahoney in that song. The Continuous Life is one of my personal favorites on here, mainly because I really like S.A.'s flows in that song. But you go to the more reggae side with the song Rub-a-Dub, which is another personal favorite of mine on here. But you also have the pretty interesting album closer, Stealing Happy Hours. Hands down one of their most unique songs, I'd say. There's really many songs that really sound like that one in their discography. And it's maybe one of my favorite 311 songs also. So yeah, Transistor by 311, definitely a really good album, I'd say. Let's go ahead and move on to the next album, 9 Lives by Aerosmith. Now, this album's not going to be for every Aerosmith fan because you do have pretty much multiple camps within the fan base. You have your people that are more into the 70s stuff. You also have the people that are into more commercial stuff like this album and Permanent Vacation and Pump and Get a Grip. But you also have your fans that like all their stuff or most of their stuff. And this album, for me, pretty dang good. And I wouldn't say it's one of their best, but it's still a pretty good album. I mean, even some of the bigger songs, Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees and Hole in My Soul, I dig those songs. You do have the big song on here, Pink. I've never been a big fan of that song, to be honest. Not their worst song, but definitely not one of their best either. I mean, I'll admit, it's probably one of my least favorites on the album, honestly. I also don't care for I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, but some of my favorites, of course, Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees, probably one of the catchiest songs on here. I also like the title track, 9 Lives. I think it starts off the album in a fairly good manner. Taste of India, probably one of the best songs they did in the 90s, I'd say, and kind of an overlooked song, I'd say. Something's Gotta Give, kind of a banger that I think is kind of overlooked. The Farm is another song that I think is overlooked, I'd say. But yeah, overall, really good album from Aerosmith, I'd say. And if you weren't into it the first time, definitely give it another listen, I'd say. Now we're going to go into some pop punk with Dude Ranch by Blink-182. Now, with this album, they still had the rawness in their sound or in the production. And now, when I saw Blink-182 live, I don't think they played anything off the album, which was a bit disappointing because I think this album is one of their best. They might have played Damn It, but I don't think so, though. But some of my favorites on here, Damn It, Pathetic, Apple Shampoo. I really like Lemmings. Josie is probably maybe my favorite song on here, and also maybe one of the heaviest songs on here, probably. But yeah, still a fun listen, I'd say, from Blink-182, and again, one of their best. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to one of my favorite albums of all time, Around the Fur by Deftones. I mean, there isn't really a single weak track on here. I mean, if I had to pick a least favorite, maybe Die the Flu, but that's not really saying much because I still think that song is pretty good. But I mean, My Own Summer, Shove It, hands down one of my favorite Deftones songs. I mean, that was the song that got me into the band, and Be Quiet and Drive, probably one of their best songs, I'd say. I mean, definitely a good balance of heaviness and melody in that song. I also like Around the Fur, the title track, which is a song that I've grown to like more and more with time. Ricketts, definitely maybe one of the heaviest songs on here. Same with Head Up, which of course features Max Cavalera from, of course, Sepultura, Nail Bomb, Cavalera Conspiracy, Soulfly, and of course many other bands or projects. But I really like that song. Yeah, Mascara, which is one of the more melodic songs of the album. But yeah, really good album from Deftones, and probably my favorite album by them. But next we have Album of the Year by Faith No More. Now, not their best, but still pretty good. And yeah, I know not all Faith No More fans are into this album. I mean, just by listening to it, you can tell the band was kind of losing it a little bit. They weren't sounding as inspired, but I still enjoy the album. Mainly more the first half than the second half, but the second half is not bad though. I do like the song, Got That Feeling, and Paths of Glory is an okay song. Ashes to Ashes is probably one of my favorite Faith No More songs. Mouth to Mouth, another song that I enjoy on here and probably one of my favorites on the album. I think the album opens up in a fairly strong way with Collision, one of the album highlights I'd say. And I'd say Strip Search is another highlight on here. Maybe musically a bit different, but I still dig it though. Last Cup of Sorrow is another fun song on here that I think is kind of catchy. But yeah, overall, pretty good album from Faith No More. Again, not one of their best, but still pretty good. But next we have Oracle by In Flames. And this is probably my favorite In Flames album. Now, a lot of people point to Just a Race as their favorite, but this album has to be my favorite. I mean, the concept of the album is pretty interesting, and I really like the first 5 songs especially. I mean, Jotun, probably one of my favorite In Flames songs, and Gyroscope, another favorite of mine from In Flames. And I really like the instrumental dialogue with the stars. Sure, maybe not one of the more complex instrumentals out there, but again, I still really dig it though. Episode 666 is another favorite of mine on the album, but yeah, I really dig this album a lot from In Flames, and again, it's probably my favorite album by them. Next we move on to Science by Incubus, and this is probably my second favorite album by them. And I mean, most people point to Make Yourself as their best, but honestly, I kind of like this album a little bit more. But Morning View is my number 1 for Incubus, but this is my second favorite. I mean, you still have a little bit of the funk from the previous album, Funk Is Among Us, in this album a little bit, and this is probably their most nu metal sounding album, I'd say. But some of my favorites: Redefine, probably one of my favorite Incubus songs. New Skin, Idiot Box, Certain Shade of Green, which is probably maybe the biggest song on here. Summer Romance, Anti-Gravity, Love Song, definitely one of their most unique songs. I mean, there isn't really much that really sounds like it. Nebula, maybe one of their heaviest songs. I really like that song. But yeah, this album is a pretty fun listen, I'd say. And if you're into nu metal, definitely give this album a listen if you haven't heard it. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to maybe a controversial pick or controversial choice. Limp Bizkit, $3 Bill Y'all, their debut. And this is Limp Bizkit at their most raw, and definitely plenty of angst with Fred Durst, especially if you listen to a song like Pollution or Nobody Loves Me or Sour. But this is probably my second favorite album by them. Significant Other has to be my favorite. I still really enjoy that album, but I still enjoy this album too. And I definitely have plenty of nostalgia for this album, especially because this was an album that I did listen to a lot when I was younger. Same with Significant Other and, of course, Chocolate Starfish. But, I mean, some of my favorites: Pollution, Counterfeit. I really like the guitar work and Stuck. Nobody Loves Me, maybe one of my favorite Limp Bizkit songs. You do have the cover of Faith, of course. I mean, George Michael fans are probably not into it, and technically it's not a great cover, mainly because of Fred Durst, but this cover, I mean, not gonna lie, I dig it. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. And I also like that rap part after this that plays after the song. I think you can only hear it from the album version, but also Indigo Flow. You do get some shout outs to some big names around the time of this album in that song. You also have the song Everything, which is of course the album closer, and it kind of sounds like a jam session, which might have been what it was, I'm not sure, but overall pretty interesting album closer. But yeah, $3 Billy Off by Limp Bizkit, pretty good album, I'd say. And now we're gonna go ahead and move on to Saint Soot by Rammstein. Now most fans would probably agree that this album is at least one of their best. I mean, you have the big song on here, maybe the biggest song, Du Hast. Some of my other favorites, I like the title track, Saint Soot, Ingol, I like Tear, I like Book Dish, but yeah, again, definitely one of Rammstein's best, I'd say. Now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the final album for this video, Seven Dust, of course their self-titled debut, and this album is just raw and has some of their heaviest songs. I mean, songs like Bitch and Born to Die are probably some of their heaviest work, some of their heaviest songs, especially Born to Die. That's maybe their heaviest songs, arguably, maybe, or at least if not, definitely, it's definitely up there as one of their heaviest songs. I really like that song a lot. Kind of overlooked, I'd say. And same with the song Prayer, which is maybe one of my favorite Seven Dust songs. I really like that song a lot. But yeah, Terminator, and of course you have the big song on here, Black. But yeah, you really can't go wrong with any of the songs on here. Of course, there are some songs that are stronger than others, which you can say with any album, but overall, pretty enjoyable listen. Now, most people point to Animosity as Seven Dust's best, but I'm actually one of the very few % of fans that actually likes this album a little bit more. But Home is my favorite Seven Dust album, but this album is in close second. And then, of course, Animosity would be my third favorite. But again, when it comes to this album, I just really like the raw, heavy nature of the album. For me, I don't know. But again, especially with the second half, you definitely get some of their most underrated stuff. Like, again, Born to Die and Speak is kind of underrated too. But yeah, really good album from Seven Dust and definitely one of their best. But that's it for the albums, the 10 albums. Let me know if you can think of more great albums from the year 1997 in the world of rock and metal. Let me know your thoughts on my picks here. Let me know some of your favorite albums from 1997 and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a comment and a like. Subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.